Ormiston SWB Academy, stands with other new structures in the centre of Bilston. It's an impressive building with its wood-clad exterior and the name in large letters for all to see. Inside, its cathedral-like atmosphere is bright and airy, with wide stairs leading to the top of its 4 floors. It's a far cry from the 2 schools that join together to form Ormiston SWB Academy.
Stonefield High School, which was also known as Hall Green High School and Parkfield Bilston High, stood where the AstroTurf is now. The school was still being used when this new building was under construction. The staff and students were able to see their future being built as they sat in class. Stonefield High School was built at the very end of the Victorian period in 1906 with decorative brickwork and high ceilings. It even had a couple of bell towers.
It was a great school, to be honest with you. It was very open plan. It was a massive building. When I was there was a primary school also at the end of it that got burnt down, I think.
We used to have to go have all your lessons in the main building, and then you'd walk down the slope across the fields right the way to the back to the dinner hall, and you'd have to line up outside in the rain and the snow.
I also remember the canteen, so we had the school canteen. They only used to let like a couple of children in at a time because there was always fights in there, and they used to give them paper plates with plastic forks and spoons because they couldn't trust them with the knives, so they didn't get knives.
Even the dinner halls, that was at the bottom of the field. So I can remember coming out of a lunch on the bell would ring, and we used to run down the side of the lane to get first in the dinner queue, because that was a completely separate building. It was a big old prefab building. I left there and I returned in 2004 as a site manager, and that was then Parkfield High School. I started as a 12-month gap fill sort of thing and never left. We had a fish pond right in the middle of in the old building, and when I started it was overgrown. You could hardly see the fish pond, and it brought back memories. So one of the first things that I done, I said I want to work on that fish pond, and I cleaned it all up. I painted it and got all the weeds, all the rubbish out of it, and turned it back into something back in the day.
Dad before me was a pupil there. 1915 my dad was born. So, and then when I went to have a look around the school, there was all cabinets with cups in, and my dad's name was on the cups. So I'd love to know what happened to those, because I'd love to see one of those. But yeah, so he should have gone to play for Portsmouth at football, but he had 8 siblings and they didn't get much money then for football, so he had to get a job. So that was a no, but all the cups was there with his names on.
Brian, the old caretaker, Brian Evans, he said to me, he says, no one's looked after that for years and years, we'll leave it alone. And I thought, well, let's get it up and running. And when I started cleaning it out, there's all fish in there. Nobody had fed them for about 10 years. And I remember when the school was being knocked down, we spent days trying to chase these fish out of the water, and staff was taking them home to the ponds.
But then it went to a junior, infant and junior school, and I went there, and then up feeder school into the Hall Green, one of the feeder schools into Hall Green, because they was adjacent to each other, right slap back in the middle of each other. I went there from 77 to 82. Obviously, time there was, I enjoyed my time there, to be quite honest, looking back on it. School days are the best days of your life.
Made a lot of friends there, some I'm still in touch with. Smacking was allowed when I was at school, so I had my fingers in the desk a few times with the wooden lid dropped. That's how they used to do that sometimes. Boys had the cane.
I'm not one that was saying that I was a good lad, because I did get the slipper, I did get the cane, because it was called, the teachers would be able to lay hands on you that time. So there was a cane for disciplinary, there was a slipper, ruler, and mostly anything board rubber if that was at hand to the teachers as well.
Throw the board rubber at you a few times. I had that bounced off my head a few times if you just look in the wrong way. Oh, I could draw a map of it. It's quite vivid, the building is. The science labs was up some stairs. You had to go upstairs to do science, and there's cooking rooms there. But then when it was things like art, we used to do pottery as well them days. It was art, pottery. We used to have to walk in our lunchtime all the way down to nearly the Birmingham New Road where the other school was, the annex. It was part of All Green, but it was on a different premises. So in our lunchtime, you had to spend your lunch, quickly get your dinner, and then walk all the way down there to get to school on time. And typing, when girls had to do typing, was down there. Art, all art was down there. Pottery, like hands-on things down there. So we used to go through a little gate right at the back where the dinner hall was, walk across some derelict fields, and I just remember heaps of soil, but it was black, so whether it come from the steel works, we used to walk all across there, all the way through no man's land. You wouldn't do it now. Cross the brook, we used to jump the brook and then get into the annex that way.
This weekly 2-mile round trip walk was a regular part of students' life. It was completely unsupervised. It's difficult to imagine this sort of responsibility being given to students now, given that our roads are much busier and safeguarding has been put into place in recent years to protect young people.
It was really old, like it was extremely old. I used to think it was haunted. I mean, there was no sign of any ghosts or anything, not that I saw or heard, but it was like really old. It was freezing cold. It was just a really old, raggedy building, really. It was always had smashed windows, so every day, like the caretakers had to come and fix the windows, put some board up until they could get the windows fixed. So it was kind of that kind of school, really, really old.
The classes was tiered like they are now, in like the higher classes to the lower classes, and I was in the top bands. So academically, I was fine and I was good, and I'd got quite a strict dad. So if anything gone home, there would have been problems. But I think the teachers were so strict, some of them, you were scared to speak to them. So I do remember a maths teacher, and I was scared of him. So if you didn't do your homework, you'd be in trouble, a lot of trouble. And I remember the once I was really stuck, so I got my cousin to help me, who was older than me, and I got it done. And that's when I had my fingers in a desk, because he kind of knew I didn't do it. And so I got into trouble for that. And then on another occasion, the same teacher ripped my work up because he said I couldn't have done it, but I did actually do it. And I remember thinking, oh, I did do that, and I had it ripped up. And so there is bad memories, and then there's also incredibly good at swimming. So by the time I was 12, I'd got all my golds, all my life-saving things, really stood out for swimming, and I should have carried it on.
I enjoy sports because I played for every school team that was going. Football was my passion. I played rugby as well, cricket as well, athletics, done that as well, and baseball and badminton as well. So it was quite any team that was going, I was used to trial out for, and normally I was used to get into it. I was captain of the football team in my first year at Hall Green. So that was good.
There was no like safeguarding as such as there is now, so you was allowed out round the town dinner time and go to the chip shop and get your chips and your sweets and then come back. A lot didn't come back, you'd have the afternoon off, but yeah, my dad was quite strict, so I came back.
Parkfield High School was built in the 1960s with extensions built in the 1970s. In the 80s, the main building had to be rebuilt due to mines in the area. The building is still there today, but Parkfield High School is no more.
we had a resident caretaker. Do you remember when they had resident caretakers in houses? And our resident caretaker was quite a funny chap. And one day the school staff, because the school staff had quite a few teams after school, like their football team and that, they'd had a football match. And the football, towards the end, had been kicked onto the top of the swimming pool. And one of the members of staff, they all went home, and one of the members of the staff thought, oh, I'll get the ball off the roof. Got on the roof, couldn't get off the roof, and trying to get off the roof, some people in nearby houses saw someone on the roof. So they phoned the police, and they went to the police. The police came and said, what are you doing there? And he said, I'm a member of staff, I'm just going to get this. And the caretaker obviously came out because he was by the house, and they said, this man on the roof, he says he's a member of staff. Can you confirm that? And Mr. Walker, the caretaker, looked at him and said, I've never seen him before in my life. I don't know who he is. I've never seen him. And he allowed them to take him to this member of staff, whose name I won't mention, to the gate before he said, actually, I do know who he was.
Going into my first lesson, and it was creative writing, and I was told about this one student, Ryan Forrester. I remember his name vividly, and they went, you'll have a nightmare with him, he'll refuse to take off his cap, he'll refuse to do anything that you ask, and it was very much this kind of negative impression. And I remember this first student walked in, multiple students were wearing caps at that point, so it was hard to distinguish who he may have been. There certainly potentially wasn't the immediate rigour walking around the building, the old school building of floors and corridors. I went, good morning, sweetheart. I said, come on in, take a seat. I said, just take your cap off. Got everyone in, sat down, did the register, did the lesson. It was as calming and chaotic as it could have been, given my first time in front of a room with all of these 16-year-olds looking at you when I'm not much older than them. But they received me very well. Did the register, kind of walked down, and you're trying to look at the names and look at the faces to know who matches because you don't know them. And I'm thinking, well, this is relatively easy, and I know that student has said they're here, and I think they've obviously told me a fib because everyone seems to be here, and he was there, and he was sat, he was the first student in, and he was compliant and pleasant and smiling. And I think for me, instantly I learnt that I'm never going to bring in judgments from other people's experiences.
The trips, we used to always take all the kids out on a trip at least once a year, always. Because of the catchment area we had, for quite a lot of kids, they'd never been to Seaside. They didn't know what Seaside was or anything like that. But when you think about how the trips were, you'd never do it now. You would never get away with it now. I mean, we used to take the kids on the train, for example, to Rhyl. We used to just walk to the station, get on the train, went to the station, went on the train, let them work in Rhyl and things like that. Or Blackpool, we went to Blackpool on coaches. We used to drop them off at the top pier, and then say, we'll see you in 2.5 hours at the middle pier, and then, well, we'll see you at such and such a time on the pier by the amusement arcade. And we never saw them in between unless we happened to come across them. And they just did these 3 little registers.
And everything was
Everything was fine, but we took them loads of places on trips. They always went, not only to Seaside, but to amusement parks and everywhere. We had some really good trips. The staff were really good, and the kids loved it.
It was a traditional corridor, unlike the building that we have here, which is very open. And we used to have these competitions on World Book Day. So we had Wonkaland versus Wonderland. We had Gothic gangplanks. And I remember I dressed up as Frankenstein's monster. So I had this kind of full grey cheesecloth tunic and this full latex head. And I even went out on duty at the end of the day. We collected money. And I just grunted for kind of most of the morning to start with. And students were like, who's that? Well, it can only be Mrs. Hughes, who's the only one daft enough to do that, and kind of parents are getting involved, to the Diwali disco, such a rich kind of culture as Parkfields and what is SWB now that we've managed to maintain, to bringing in my toaster from home to make the kids breakfast in their old staff room.
I don't think we had to do the risk assessments to the same level at all. Nobody ever did a risk assessment about how you got on the coach or how you got off the coach or what you did in between time or, I mean, I went on and ran loads of trips, and we just had a list of names with phone numbers, house phone numbers obviously, or occasional mobile phone numbers, and off we set, basically. That was it. And you just assumed, you made massive assumptions that they were going to be okay.
My very last class, kind of English class at SWB on the Parkville Road, and my very first class in kind of W14 at SWB here will always very, very strongly stay in my memory. And what's really I'm really thankful for, some of my students now are 34-year-olds, you know, and live in another side of the world.
They had a massive Christmas party for pensioners, old age pensioners and things at Christmas, and it was a really big party. And you can tell that the times have changed, because one of the biggest excitements for the visitors when they came was halfway through when the sherry came out. And everybody had and you could see them go around. And some of them they used to say, if you were going round to the sherry, they'd say, "Is yours the Harvey's? Is yours the Harvey?" Or the cheap one from down the road. And there were loads of, you know, it was really good. It was a big thing. And the students did such a lot of work with it. They were the ones serving, they were the ones preparing. We had all that, and that was quite a long time before it became the vogue.
You know, so I'm now seeing students that have now got married and had their own children. And what's really scary for me is last open day in October, I had 17 students who were here whose children are now starting in September.
We had massive summer fairs on the fields with different stalls, loads of different stalls and games, and loads of kids involved. We had those for years. You can tell our summer fair, you could hear it coming down the school because we had the brass band. The brass band used to start picking up people on the way, as it were, and by the time they got to school, we had a load of people following the band into the school for the summer fair. We had hog roasts and everything. It was really a very big summer fair. We also had like productions, a lot of productions. The drama department, especially under a chap called Martin Morgan, who later went on, in fact, to become the head at Smestow School. And he'd put on really, really good shows involving loads of kids, and they were quality performances. And we had a lot of people do that. But we also had a different sort of performance in that we had the staff group and the staff band, and they performed and they were funny. They were talented, but they were funny, you know. And we had some really good staff events like that, staff quizzes, everything. There were lots of things that involved the school. You don't seem to get that staff event so much now.
Initially, Hall Green was merged with Colton High School, meaning students from Hall Green were bused to Colton for some of their lessons. However, Colton decided that they no longer wished to continue the link. So, a new partner was sought. Parkfield was an obvious choice as it was half the distance from Hall Green, making the busing of students for maths and English lessons much quicker.
Towards the last few years, we had to transport our students up from Prosser Street up to the Parkville site, various journeys throughout the day. So we'd have a lot of transport transport staff. And
why were these students transported?
It was really to get them to different lessons, because part of the school was becoming obsolete because the school was becoming run down. It was so we used to transport some of the students for various lessons, and I think it was the last 12 months of closing the school, all students was transported up to Parkville site, and at the end of the day they was transported back and released onto Prosser Street.
And they went down, people from school went down to teach there, and then as time went on and it became apparent that the school was not going to increase its numbers really, they decided to use that school later stages. English and maths went down there, the whole of the English and maths department went down there for 12 months. And we taught down there.
To Hall Green?
Down to Hall Green.
Whatever it was,
and
yeah.
we would the students came down from Parkfield High on coaches, and we had, because I was running English at the time, and we had every day we had 2 year groups down. So we had, say for example, on Monday we could have had, say, year 8 and year 10, and they came down there and they did 3 lessons of maths and 3 lessons of English, and then they came down perhaps twice a week, so they had their 6 lessons. Though they did go up for some of their lessons because they didn't have facilities for swimming or anything like that, because they never had a swimming baths or anything like that there. And they did go up for some of their lessons. They had their own science block down here, so the science was down here because they had a new science block. Well, new in relation to the school. It wasn't a very old science block, which was separate from the school. It was part of the school, but separate down an incline. It must have been about here, you know, the science block. So they had their own science block. And generally speaking, I think that lasted for about a year. And then after that year 7 came down, I think, to do COPE or something like that. And then after that was when the school was being built. This school started to be built. And obviously in the end, we all moved to here.
Point, it kind of wasn't, it was a whole green building, it was still classed as kind of SWB, and what you had is a pretty diverse demographic, you know, kind of Bilston site was, you know, arguably more predominantly white British, and that wasn't the case of Wolverhampton Road East. And what happened is we'd originally bused the students from down this end up to Wolverhampton Road East, and I can remember the students being quite vocal about, well, why is it us that has to travel, and why is it not them? And what we didn't want to create was this kind of us and them divide. So Kerry Insker, who was the principal at the time, she was officially the first proper full SWB head. We had Rob Resides, who was an interim principal, and Caroline Sutton, who came in as an advisor, who's currently, I think she's now head at Dormston School. Kerry said, okay, then the easiest way to kind of solve this is everyone's bust, everyone changes. So we had to pack up English and maths in their entirety as subject areas, every piece of stationery, every piece of literature, every text, and we moved down carte blanche to the Bilston site. So the students came down and they had 3 lessons of maths and 2 lessons of English, or vice versa, and that was a day, and they were all bussed. And we were down for a year. We invested in painting the building SWB colours, so this blue and yellow and this old Victorian building, and you know, trying to put in projectors and new whiteboards to make it as, you know, interactive as it could be. And then within a year I got pulled into Kerry's office, and with a very hushed breath and behind her hand she went, we're going back to Wolverhampton Road East. And we're going back to Wolverhampton Road East because we've managed to secure funding from Building Skills for the Future for the physical building, and then obviously the old Hall Green building as was knocked down. It was tense to start with. I know historically when I first started at Parkfields, it's very much Colton Hills was the enemy school because geographically it was close by, and you heard all of these stories about planned fights after school, and not one of them happened. In my existence there, not one of them happened, and we felt very much that might be the way. And certainly there was some vocal opposition, but no, thankfully no physical opposition, and ultimately it's a case of this is how it is, let's get on with it.
Obviously we sistered with Bilston High, and it started to be that certain lessons were buzzed over to Bilston High. My daughter was actually a student at the time when they started that reintegration of moving on backwards and forwards. I think it was maths and English. They used to come over at Bilston High and then come back, and then obviously we used to have Bilston High students come over. So that was nice to see. We expected it to be divided, but it didn't. They all came, interacted, and they all became different friends from different backgrounds, and which was nice.
I started to work there as a lunchtime supervisor at first. Then I went on to the coaches. So I was a supervisor on the coaches, moving the children up and down from our school to the Parkfield school. So the coaches used to pull up, and then we used to get all the students on. I think it was maths, English and core lessons they used to be moved around for. So we used to have the times that there was moving and the coaches would come. There'd be one supervisor on each coach, and then we'd take them up to Parkfields, and at the end of the day we'd bring them all back again. Bit rough sometimes, a couple of fights here and there and arguments and not wanting to wear seat belts and whatnot, that kind of thing. In the winter we used to stand outside waiting for the coaches, and the students used to pile us with snowballs while we was waiting. But yeah, and then we merged and all came here after.
Eventually, the decision was made by Wolverhampton Educational Authority to build a brand new school, an academy which would accommodate all the students from Parkfield High and Hall Green. On the 31st of August 2009, both schools closed and OSWB was officially opened.
I was gutted. It was, I don't know, it's a big part of your life, wasn't it? Because going there, my father went there, I went there, and to the local community, it was a big loss.
Yes.
Because it was done over quite a lot of time, and because we'd already had the joining, as it were, for some of the things, and the way it was handled, because I was a governor at the time, still a governor at the time, and also as a member of staff, we were able to come down and have a look at the place being built. We were shown plans about it. We were involved in processes. We were able to put forward ideas about what we thought the building should be like. So we had a massive part in how it was being built. And because of that, I think we felt quite involved with this new building before it came. Obviously some people left when Parkfield closed, but I think a lot of people would have left anyway. And there was some, because of the fact that some of the roles were duplicated, because there was the people on both sides who held the same roles, and therefore there were some people whose jobs perhaps didn't exist anymore. So there was a loss of staff in that respect. And some people, and remember this is going back now 12 years, so it wasn't as obvious it did now, some people didn't want to work in an academy chain. So that they took the opportunity, because there were a lot more schools that were still local authority schools at that time, to stay and go to a local authority. But generally speaking, people viewed it, I think, very positively. They knew that this had got to happen, that the school had got to be amalgamated, that we couldn't keep on having a split-side school. We moved as a school and not as individuals, so we all became part of it. I think it was accepted quite well, and plus, of course, it's still a really lovely school. It has, there's nothing really different about it, although some of the rooms have had to be used as classrooms because the numbers of people were low, numbers of students were lower at the beginning than they are now. It's an anticipation of, well, it's something new, and we're on the ground floor with it.
I think there's always an element of sadness and why us, and why do we have to move down there, when certainly kind of Wolverhampton Road East, what was Parkfields, have been there such a long time. But inevitably, it's like most things, there is change, and it's about then really exciting selling that kind of project to students. You know, what we were really thankful for is a chance with Carillion and students to help design the school, so that the transition process was as smooth as it could be.
Mini college, that's how I see this, is like a mini college area where you use, because most colleges now are all one block, aren't they?
The Bilston site was a little bit like, it's part of history. My dad came here, you know, when it was the old Stonefield. I'm going back many moons ago. My dad would have been in his 90s now, kind of thing. He came here. Also, living in Bilston, growing up in Bilston, it was also part of the your local area. It was always sort of the school by the fire station, you know. And it was sad to see the building go. You know, I mean, I know it was decrepit, it was old and everything, but it was part of the local area, the same as like Sankey's was, you know. It's what you grew up with.
Did you come to the school at all?
No, I went to Moseley Park. Yeah, we saw it being built. So when we were at Bilston site, we used to look out the back of the kitchen door and you could see it literally being built. And even like, as daft as it sounds, like the car park, the pathway to the car park, we was like, oh gosh, that must be the car park. You know what I mean? And then like somebody come along and said, you do realise the kitchen is a mile away from the dining room? We was like, nah, don't be daft. But we call that the Golden Mile now. Up and down with the trolleys. So yeah, you know, it's nice to have sort of seen it progress.
I think it was mixed. I think a lot of Parkfields didn't want to come here, and then the ones that was already based here, it was going to be a lovely new school, so they did want to come back here. So I think there was mixed feelings with it, really. A lot of people wanted to, and then you had the ones where we're Parkfields, we're not Bilston, and then. But once it opened, I think it was quite good. It was quite sad, especially because my dad had gone there before as well, so it was quite sad. I did have a final walk round it when we knew it was going, and you've got separate playgrounds, boys and girls, when I went as well. And there was a wall across with boys right across the top, so you were split up break times and lunch times.
Well, to be quite honest, when I was in the fire service, being next door and being in and around this area, I knew that the school was being attacked by arsonists and stuff like that. So I was in and out of this school anyway when it was unoccupied, because it went unoccupied for a while as well. And the kids was burning it down, getting into school and burning it down, setting fires and really wrecking what was already within the premises. Again, if it was demolished for that reason, and obviously they put a new school in place. And again, being in the fire service and in fire safety, because I was a fire safety officer as well, the plans of the new build of this building came across the table, and so we had ensured that there was the proper fire safety measures in place to protect the building from if there was ever a fire.
When I was a student at school, it was many years ago. There wasn't. You turned up. If you turned up for your exam, you turned up. If you didn't, you get a zero. Simple as that. But now, I wouldn't say the support's there. There's a lot more support to get the students to the exams. It's like sometimes we'll go out and if a student can't get here, we'll help out. We'll go in the middle, we'll pick them up, we'll bring them to the exam.
I mean, the profession absolutely has changed. I know that's kind of, one of the questions to focus on. How is it so different? And I suppose there has never been more of the red tape and the bureaucracy and that heavy judgment from externals about the thing that you do day in and day out. I think because of the heavy judgments on schools, I think you always have the highest expectations. You always want the children to be the best version of themselves. You always want them to be compliant because that's part and parcel of the world that they live in. You had your consequences. You knew if you did this would be the consequence, but above and beyond that, now we have these routines for learning, expectations of how to enter a room and leave a room, and other than don't hurt each other when you're in the room and don't throw a chair, there certainly wasn't that structure that you have nowadays.
Back then it was, you can have a white polo shirt. If you've got a tie on, you've got a tie on. If you haven't, it was no preference to ties. It was uniform, no preference to outdoor clothing. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Expectations were a lot stricter now to what they were back then. We were allowed, back in the 80s, I always remember you used to go off for your dinner, go home for your dinner, come back for your dinner, you were back within that time. I think it's the GCSEs, you're expected to get your GCSE grades, and that's not us as a school, that's everywhere. Because now you can't get a job unless you've got X amount of GCSE grades. You can't move on in education unless you've got X amount of GCSE grades. Not that the students that come to us, we have expectations and rules that we have to follow around the academy, but if we let them keep going and excelling and excelling and excelling with their behaviour and there's no out for them, then that obviously leads to exclusion. So what we're trying to prevent is we set our goal that they have X amount of behaviour within a certain term, then we turn it around and ask them and make sure that we turn it around to make sure they get back on the right pathway. It's a lot different because I think back in the 80s, you could walk into one job. It didn't matter whether you had qualifications because you could walk into one job, better yourself, and there was jobs after jobs after jobs. Now, their expectations is more academic because they want the better job.
Yeah, we still do a traditional roast dinner, traditional fish on a Friday, but there is a varied choice for the kids. They're spoilt. The choice that we give them, you know, there's about 4 different counters we have in operation. Everything from your traditional roast dinner, as I say, to your street food, stir fry, you know, and your burgers, your pizzas that kids, you know, go mad for. So yeah, it's wide variety. Back in the day, very basic, sandwich, one choice, and a vegetarian choice. And that was it when I first started. When we went up to WRE, there was a little bit more choice, but nowhere near the numbers that we do now. Well, there's 1,200 on site. I wouldn't say every child, every member of staff eats, nowhere near. But you're talking numbers, you know, 700, 800 kind of thing on a daily basis. I think behaviour's improved from when I first came. But I think there's a lot of different support system in place now for the children. Like even from when I went to school, we never had, like, you know, your pastoral staff, your AP department. The kids seem to have more respect. You still get you know, you have to prompt and please and thank yous every now and again, but you know, that's human nature.
I mean, they've got a lot more opportunities here. There's a lot more things that they can do, and I think it's a lovely building for them. So I think they've got a lot more chance in. This school was a lovely school.
Social, emotional and mental health is a big thing as well, where that people now diagnosed with ADHD and other mental aspects and health issues, but we didn't have that as well. If you was deemed to be a naughty kid at that time, back in the day, back in my time, he was a naughty kid. Teammates fancied the fag or smoking on the beach. They used to just sit there and smoke on the beach with couldn't care less attitude. Some got expelled at the time. That was permanently excluded or suspended as it is now. But you know, if you got expelled, you got expelled, and that was it really. There was another thing of you used to go external isolation or managed move stuff. You just got expelled and that was it.
The popularity of Ormston SWB with its growing numbers shows the success that has come about by the merger of 2 of its former schools.
Hello and welcome to Ormiston SWB Academy. I'm Mr Mason and I'm the principal here. Now is a really exciting time to be a student here at SWB, but instead of me talking about our academy, I thought I'd allow some of our wonderful pupils to share their experiences of what it's like to be a student at SWB.
I can't believe that a school like this actually exists. Everything here is so well thought of, from the education to the aesthetic to everything. I feel extremely happy.
Very happy at this school. There's great facilities. The teachers are all really welcoming when you first come in. They all comfort you if you've got any issues. It's brilliant, really good first experience for the school.
My first year was really good, to be honest.
It has been amazing.
First year's gone really well. I feel like I've accomplished anything I want to.
I managed to get into the musical stuff very quickly.
Once you start doing it, you won't be able to get out of it. I think that's a good thing. That is a good thing.
I enjoyed my first year at SWB. It was fun and all the teachers were really nice.
I got to meet a lot of nice teachers.
Really got along with teachers, made a lot of friends, and I feel like my next years at this school will just be even better.
Teachers have really helped me because I've been here since year 7. I think I've gotten close to quite a few of them. I've always really struggled with maths, so My math teachers have always been a godsend. I used to hate science and now I'm doing biology and chemistry due to Dr. Patel. She gave me my science grade. Whenever we needed help, they would sit us down, go through it and make sure they spend the extra time with students who needed it. They're not judgmental at all, they're willing to help anybody.
If you want to take up something, maybe even as a career, if you move into like year 11, they'll let you do it.
You can get any opportunity that you want. The possibilities are endless.
One thing our school offers that a lot of schools don't is called drop-down days. We get to do certain things that build character. We did CPR and army training as well, which was really fun. Also, a part of this, we get to go on trips. We went to London more recently and we stood outside Buckingham Palace and we kind of felt like celebrities.
In sixth form we get a lot of opportunities to look at universities and next steps. It's not so much about picking what the school thinks you want, it's more about you discovering what you want to take later.
So I got to do DOV through the school. I found this really good and it helped me gain a lot of confidence but also get to know people that I wouldn't usually talk to.
I feel very, very safe.
The safeguarding team is very on the ball.
Bullying is dealt with really quickly because of their no bullying policies.
They're very quick to find a solution for you.
We have counsellors and safeguarding and everything. Friendly people who will listen to your worries and help you through things.
The best part about the school is the community. A great, really friendly environment and everyone's like really welcoming. So it's a good place to be.
The best thing about the school is the staff.
The best part about SWB is probably the teachers, the surroundings you have and just the relationships you build.
The best thing is probably the sporting opportunities, which is really good because I'm really athletic. I've been able to take part in the Oak Cup and then also represent the school for Commonwealth Games.
The best thing about the school, I'm not gonna lie, I think it's the cafeteria. It has a lot of diversity.
The chips and curry sauce on a Friday. That's always been a highlight.
Well, the school has changed quite a bit since I was in year 7, especially considering we had a new principal. We actually got a good from Ofsted.
From year 7 to now, there's been such a drastic change in the way that teachers are delivering their lessons. I feel like there's a lot more focus on understanding.
I think we've had a lot of new teachers come in which feel very experienced in what they're doing.
The school and the teachers do a great job of supporting those who maybe struggle a little bit or need that extra support, and that's always nice, especially during exam season. Even from day 1, the first set of mocks we did in year 10, we've always had that support from the teachers.
I was so proud of my exam results. I got a 9.9 in my science and that was partly down to me, but also partly down to my absolutely amazing teacher who I loved so much, and results day was just amazing, brilliant, great.
There's nothing really negative to say about the school.
We want you to make SWB your first choice for secondary education. If you like what you've seen or want more information, please follow us on social media, visit our website or contact us to arrange a visit. We look forward to seeing you in the future.
One word that sums up SWB. Phenomenal.
Devoted. Yeah.
Engaging.
Helpful.
Educational.
Wild.
Excellent. Just excellent.